record on this computer and we'll get started. So this is our guest artist session where we're welcoming Mrs. Hawes, who's a mixed media artist. And she is going to tell us a little bit about herself, and then we'll go through and ask you some questions and have you answer. And if I have any students here who are willing to read any questions, if you could put your name in the chat, I would really appreciate that. And I will give you some extra credit points for that. Skydie last week did that for us and it was really fabulous. So if you are willing, I know some of you are fabulous readers. I'd really appreciate that. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome, go for it.
Okay, so hi guys. I am, well, it says Mrs. Hawes. My name's Melissa. And I just realized you guys go to Judson, right?
Leslie.
Leslie. Okay, I went to Judson. My cousins went to Leslie. So I grew up here. Anyway, I'm not totally sure if you guys know about each of these particular pieces.
We did talk a little bit about each one with the instruction or the information that you gave us, but if you want to talk more about them, then
okay.
feel free.
Golly, I think one thing that was kind of interesting about creating them is they were all created at different times, and it was kind of later as I had personal reflection that I realized that there was some sort of relatedness to them, and I'll talk about that more when we get into the questions. This one was created by lithography, which means you're drawing on stone, and then through a chemical process, very scientific, you are able to print the image onto, yep, that's the one, onto anything. So on this particular one, it's paper and then a fibery paper. So, and then I overlapped them. And then the next one on the top right, that one is 2 layers. The first one, the background, I actually had my daughter, who's now 10. She was 2. I had her draw on a piece of wood and then I carved it up. And that's the like super jaggedy background. And then I printed that. And then the second one over the top of the black lines, that was my own carving. And printing is kind of like almost like rubber stamps. So, except it's not rubber, it's wood or stone, like those two. The bottom right is a large piece I did for an international art competition. And most of it is oil paint, but the person is made by painting with melted crayon, like Crayola. The elephant is just cardstock and then tacky glue. And I did a whole lot of measuring and designing. Like I printed out a picture of an Asian elephant online, and then I drew on the paper like where I wanted angles to be, and then I made some measurements, and that became my elephant. And now I have this template, and so I've been tempted to actually make a really larger version of that one, and it opens up and no paper is overlapping. It's all just edge to edge. And then the globe on the left, there was somebody in my community getting rid of zipper pulls, like thousands of them. And I'm like, sure. And I'm actually not like a hoarder. I just thought something cool has got to come out of 1,000 zipper pulls. And then the globe I found, it was like Facebook Marketplace for $5. So I bought the globe, and we'll talk about this a little later, but I am very interested in geophysics and plate tectonics. So the zippers are where all the tectonic plates are on the globe, like the major ones. There are a lot of smaller ones. Anyway, those are the pieces. We can go ahead and go on to questions if you want.
I am super curious about how this is going to turn out. I'm really excited to see it when it's done. And I love the idea. I didn't really understand like plate tectonics until I was like early middle school. And so I feel like it just kind of, we have this idea in our mind, right, of just like the continents and the countries. And then, but thinking about showing our planet in a different way, I think is really captivating.
Yeah.
Love that.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anybody willing to read questions this morning? I know it's a Monday. I know it's early. We could take turns. People could just read one question if everybody wants to commit. No? Too early? Maybe next category. Okay, I'll start with the process questions. And then if you want to read questions, you can put your name in the chat. All right. So our first question is, how do you make your art? And I know that there's quite a few different mediums that you use, but maybe however you would like to answer that question.
Yeah, that was a good question because I really kind of do everything. I'm trained as a painter and printmaker, but as I've made more art, I've kind of moved into anything that gets the point across. So I come up with an idea, and then I think about what materials would make the bigger impact. So like that one that was on the top right corner, that was it was like purple and reddish. I used it's called No Feeling is Final, and it's kind of it's kind of about pain essentially. And so I used alcohol and salt, like rubbing alcohol and salt, because those are things that are associated with, like, if you have a cut, like, those things don't feel good, but sometimes alcohol is used to clean a space,
And we're
so
talking about rubbing alcohol, not
yeah,
necessarily
yeah,
health class
yeah.
consumptive beverages. Perfect.
Right. So rubbing alcohol, because like at the doctor, they'll like clean off your skin before you get a shot. But salt in the wound is painful. And so it's kind of so I use those mixed with the ink to create some of those textures you see.
I
So
love using rubbing alcohol and salt with watercolor. It's like
yeah,
it's so reactive and so unpredictable. So I love
yeah.
that you had that.
Yeah. So every material I use, I try to consider like deeper meaning. So that's kind of more my process than anything, is just really thoughtful about what I'm putting things with.
I love that. And I love thinking about that. I'm curious about this piece here because you were saying that you did oils, which are kind of, you know, we don't use oils with younger folks, right? Because they can be toxic, right? And you have to like have a lot of, and then but you have you had said in caustic, and so I'm thinking like wax painting, but the fact that you use them with Crayola and then you have this figure here, like that creates a really interesting dynamic of maybe some more like younger, more vulnerable feelings with that more like refined abstraction of the oils.
Yeah, so the oil I actually just honestly used because it was that's my specialty, but it's more because it has more of a fluid, like you can, for me, it's I can create a more fluid blending of colors, like you can see the greens, how they don't totally blend in with each other. But like I feel like with acrylics, they dry so fast that sometimes, you might put some color on and then you put another color on and they don't blend really well. It'll be like chunky, chunky. And with watercolor, for me, because it's not my skill level, um, it's also kind of this chunky, chunky outlined look. And I feel with oil, it could blend, and I wanted it to look like a wave. Um, there's also a nautilus shell. If you see that, I don't know if you guys do
Yeah.
the
Right
golden
around
ratio.
there.
But there's a whole poem about the changes you go through. Like the change in nautilus shell goes through it. Every time it grows, it makes a partition. It makes a line, and then it moves to another segment, and it's kind of like leaving the hard things behind and coming out stronger and more beautiful. And so this person is like trapped within this wave nautilus shell, like, trapped in their own shell rather than growing from it. And so I did the Crayola because it's kind of juvenile, even though they're like, I love Crayola as a company and their products. I think they're great, but it's, associated with being young and, you know, I guess less refined. And so I melted it like in a little baby crock pot, and I just painted it, smeared it on. And then that way the person also is tangible, like, because it's all like lumpy bumpy and the oil paints are smooth. So because so often when we have pains and things we're going through, we are tangible, but our pains are surrounding us and they're not tangible. So I wanted it to be like these two different textures, one with sort of implied texture and one with actual texture. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
like it can feel invisible, right?
Yes,
And I know our students can relate to that too, sometimes feeling those like really intensive stressors, but you can't hold it. You can't be like, here is a wound, but I'm struggling or I'm sad or I'm having, just anxiety or depressed feelings or anger or feeling stuck. Um,
exactly.
and I love how like the wave here comes like over the foot. I
Hmm.
like how it fits into the piece too. So this piece is very captivating to me. So thank you so much for sharing it. I know that I mean, I'm not sure of like your overall comfort level with sharing vulnerability as an artist, but I would say that overall this is our second artist um, guest session for this quarter, but we did 4 last quarter. And this is definitely, your pieces are definitely like the most emotionally charged, which I really appreciate. And I think that I had mentioned to our 8th grade students, but I really am grateful that you're here with our 8th grade students because I think not that 6th and 7th grade students don't have intense emotions, but I think as students mature and grow, and some of our students are 7th grade students here, but as they get into 7th and 8th grade, those emotions just become more and more complex as you get older. So I'm really grateful that our 8th grade students have been able to see your work and really see how you can channel your emotions into your work and kind of process some of those more and more intensive and complex feelings.
Yeah, I do actually have one piece I didn't share because it is like a little too raw for me. It's not that it's inappropriate to share. It's just like if I talked about it, I'd be like,
It's and that's where you just have to like check in with yourself, and we talk about that too, of just like sharing what like pushing your comfort zone but not into a place where you're unsafe. So that's good
yeah.
modeling. All right, how long does your art take to make, or like how much time and effort do you put into your art?
Golly, it depends. So like I'm gonna make Christmas cards and I'm hoping that they only take like 4 hours because I'm making 100 of them. So I'm gonna print them. And then, but like my best stuff is about 40 to 80 hours each. And I would say most artists spend more time than that. So like the one with the wave, that was about 40 hours. So was the elephant. The one with like the snake and stuff, that was closer to 80. And that was hard. That one was hard. But you get what you put into it. So, you know, the more time you spend, generally the better the art. I do have one piece that was like 4 to 6 hours, and it's gotten some amazing critical acclaim, and it didn't take that long. So it's kind of like, eh. So I
Isn't
guess,
that funny how that works sometimes?
yeah,
I've definitely had art reviews too where I had like 2 projects and I'm like, this one took me 5 weeks and then this one took me 2 days, and they're like, oh my god, look at this 2-day one, and I'm like, cool,
it's so
thanks.
simple. Yes. I guess whatever it takes. I mean,
Yeah,
some things don't take long, and some things take a long time. But it's like, I mean, I say whatever it takes because it's not done till it's done, right? I mean, if
and
it's
you
done in
can't
4 hours,
predict
it's good.
what people are going to connect to,
Yeah.
right? Your pieces are going to connect to people, and that's where you have to like let go. Like having a child, you're like, here's the world, and you hope that you can like protect it and control it, but once it's out into the world, it's going to
Yeah.
happen however it gets perceived.
Yeah, that's true.
And I know you talked a bit already about you talked quite a bit about the meaning behind the work that you make and just
Mm.
kind of like channeling that emotion stuff. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that or if you feel like that one was answered.
So can I do number 3? How much effort I put in?
Yes, please.
So I would say that I don't have good craft. I would be the kind of person when I create things that there's like a stupid thumbprint that ends up on it, or it's just like a torn corner, no matter how careful I am. And somebody told me, somebody who was kind of a villain in my life in the
Oh,
art world. I mean, just because it happens, people are stinky, but she was like, you owe it to yourself to have good craft. And I was like, whoa. And that, like, it, to me, that meant if there's a bent corner, fix it. If there's a thumbprint, you fix it. And so, how much effort do I put in my art? Once I learned that nugget of gold from that villain, um, it was like, I owe it to myself. I'm doing it anyway. I might as well do it well. And so my effort has increased. And so that's something I recommend. Just especially you guys, you're making art. You might be like, it's just an assignment, but you're doing it. So you might as well do it right. Right. So that's my effort level. Meaning, so number 4.
can I speak to the effort thing real quick on what you said?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like my initial reaction when you said that was like I felt defensive for you, right? And I felt like some art, if there's like and I think right of like Bob Ross, like happy accidents. I think if you have like mistakes, right? Like I feel like there's probably a balance definitely between what you're saying, which is creating like very high quality, go through, make sure you're delivering what you want, make sure you're, fixing edges and putting in the effort without getting to that place where you're like, it has to be perfect or I can't show it, right? I've had several students where they're like, well, it's not perfect yet, so I can't show it. And like we talk a lot about like done is better than perfect, done is better than good, done is better than even bad. Like done, getting something finished without getting stuck, right? And then the more and more work you do, and I like, and just kind of wanting to mention that as like how that fits in, right, with that craftsmanship piece of do the work, get it done, and then you can keep adding, right? And you can keep correcting things that you want better, and you can keep making it better and better.
Well, and I think that, it's kind of the thing with like, I totally, totally love that you brought that up because I had this moment where I was like, oh, well, my man, I should have put my self portrait on there. Like, it's not perfect, but it looks like me. But if you look at like Van Gogh's stuff, it's so like otherworldly. If you walked into a room that looked like Van Gogh's room, it would freak you out because it doesn't look real. And so it's not perfect. But
It's your unique voice and
it's
style.
considered, yes, it's your unique voice and style. And that's cool. And one thing I learned is I might not love it. Like I might not love that my style is kind of, I'm wishing I put my self portrait on, but it's kind of like long and it's kind of just and sketchy. I might not like it, but other people do, and they pay for it, like they buy it. So, yay. So I think it's kind of understanding that you have your own style, and that's cool. In fact, that's fantastic, and also taking really good care of your stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like both and for sure. And our artist last week, who Miss Duncan,
Yeah.
talked about how a lot of her art, like she doesn't even try for this specifically, but like parts of her always come out in her art. And that actually, hearing that from her last week, really like I started looking at my art a little bit differently and like ways that I'm critical about my own art and being like, actually, this does represent me in like a way that I'm not super comfortable with, but I'm also really grateful for because it is that reflection, like without even trying. Like, and students, I love that you're here to hear this. Like, as you keep making art, you're going to learn things about yourself that don't come to your brain like instantly. Like, you start seeing like more about yourself that comes out in like sneaky, wonderful, therapeutic ways as you keep making the art.
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome.
So number 4, I was
Yes.
going to add one thing I loved about doing this with you guys is I realized, I started discovering some more meaning. And I realized that a lot of what I make, whether it's like hard, like the stuff I showed you, or joyful, it's kind of about navigating life alone. I kind of had this existential crisis, and that's kind of a massive word for middle school. I had this moment of self-reflection where I realized that like even my siblings or my very best friends, and we've all done life together, um, we still have different experiences, whether it's our personalities or whatever. And so sometimes, like with my art, it's because there are feelings you feel and things you go through that even though people are right next to you, they will process it differently. And so for me, so I think I heard a quote recently about 2020. It's like we're all in the same storm, but we're all in different boats. And so it's kind of like that. So my art is kind of about how I navigate and move through life on my own, like just me, not all my wonderful support system. So anyway, that's kind of my meaning.
I love that. And not to get too like inspiring, but like it just reminded, like I just watched the Michelle Obama documentary, and just her talking about how voice is so important, and like we think that our voice isn't very important, like because it seems really ordinary to us, but like how important all of our stories are, and that we forget because we're so comfortable and familiar with it, that our voice needs to be heard by other people and that it can inspire other people or connect with other people, and we don't we don't fathom that when it's us, but when you start writing or you start writing poetry or you start painting or you start singing or rapping or dancing and you're dancing your story, like others will connect to that.
It's true. In fact, the one I'm not showing, um, I the person who bought that piece, she said that she was buying it because it reminded her of growing up with a father who was alcoholic, had alcoholism. And that's something I didn't experience. But she connected to that art piece for me, it was a recovery from a major accident where I broke my back and couldn't walk and kind of relearned how to walk. And so that was why I made the art, but she connected to it for her own reasons. And I think that that's super interesting.
Yeah, but some like somehow just that healing piece was like
Mm-hmm.
that thread for both of you. And that's
Right.
like a really, we talk, we talk about art being a connector, right? Connecting to yourself and others and like the world as a whole. And it's not always linear, right? It's not always like a straight line, but it can curve.
Yes, true.
And I'm like really grateful, that I have seventh and eighth graders this quarter. Like I said, I love the sixth and seventh and graders too, but I know that eighth graders are really great at kind of conceptualizing some of those more metaphorical ideas. So,
It's true. There's like this major maturity that happens in eighth grade.
all right. Do you want to talk a little bit about materials? I know you have like a huge variety. I'm wondering, like, better question might be like, what haven't you done that you?
Uh,
And I know that gets into the future questions, but I know we're spending a lot of time on process. So my plan is that we go until 11:15,
okay.
and then we'll see how many questions we get done. But I'm curious if they're like maybe just whatever you want to tell us about the materials you use, or like what you'd like to use in the future, or like anything.
Um, Gosh. Okay. So materials, I'll use anything. I don't use bodily fluids because that's just
It's
gross.
probably for the best.
Yeah, it was a rule in college, and I was like, it's so limiting. But you know what? Gross. Just but there is an ink like that if you spit in it, it becomes kind of like cool translucent. So I'll say bodily fluids except spit. um, let's see, but honestly, I realized kind of I think it was like earlier this summer, I realized, oh, because I my process. I don't know if you guys have talked about doing a study, but I was doing a study on paper on glass. Um, and now that art project has turned to like thread on organza. And anyway, but I discovered that a lot of my art relies on different adhesives, knowing what adhesives work with what, and different papers, because I love the textures of different papers. So if I were to say, what materials do I use? If I just had glue and paper for the rest of my life, that's all I need.
That's awesome. I don't think very many people would say that. So that's really unique. That's awesome. And when I was doing book arts and teaching book arts, we made our own rabbit skin glue, and that was probably like the creepiest.
Yeah, it's gross. I've done that.
But it's,
But it
you know,
works.
it's very traditional. They've been using it for thousands of years, and it works really well. And it's like very transparent and archival. So,
Yeah,
but
true.
yeah,
True.
good times.
Hmm.
Do you ever get worn out when making art? I love that question. It's very unique to this quarter.
Sure. So I was gonna say where I get materials.
Oh yeah.
Um, I like there's buy nothing groups on Facebook, so it's like people getting rid of free stuff, so like the zippers and stuff. But mostly Michaels, Amazon, Blick. I should be more profound, but that's the truth. Do I get worn out? When I have a deadline. And the thing that's weird is I need to have a deadline to finish things, even though I'm not a procrastinator. It's just good for me for planning. Um, so when I have a deadline, I'm like stressed out. So like the one I talked about with the fiber and organza fabric, that has a deadline, and I need to make thousands of knots. I have French knots, and I'm like, wah. And then like my hands will cramp
I know, and
up.
you
Or
don't have students to give extra credit to. That was like my so many hours in college was just getting extra credit to helping my professors finish their installations, right?
oh, I never got to do that.
Really? That was like all the professors were like, we're gonna do installations and we'll give students extra credit to make this
Oh,
happen.
that would be nice. I would love minions. I have there's one I did with where I needed like hundreds and hundreds of kisses on a piece of paper.
Mm,
And of course now we can't do that with life in times of COVID. But I found like a youth group, and all of them, guys and girls, all put on lipstick and like kissed all the paper for me. And I'm like,
that's amazing.
yeah, because I was like, oh, it hurts. Because I was making so many. And I was like, you know what, you do it.
Like just an interesting, right? You're like, well, tell me about your job. My mouth hurts from kissing
Oh,
paper
it's
all
like
day.
kissing paper. It was funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Ah. Okay, let's see what's next. Now that I'm switching to purpose questions, do I have any students who want to jump in and read some questions? I'm like channeling my Brene Brown right now. I haven't actually listened to her podcast. I've only listened to like everything else she's written recently or ever.
I love
Oh,
her.
Isla. Awesome.
Isla. My 10-year-old's middle name is Isla. That is such a good name.
My puppy's name is Isla.
Ah, such a good name.
If I say it loud enough, she'll come over. Okay, Isla, we're ready for you. I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. What inspires you to create art?
So I feel like when I see beauty, I don't think anyone else sees. So sometimes I and my poor family will just be somewhere and I'll just be like watching something kind of floating in the breeze. And I'm like, that's really beautiful. And so I feel like that inspires me a lot. Or even, I don't know if I told this in my description, but like looking at the shower curtain and how it's like, or stirring gravy. I think I mentioned that. I'm like, it's so beautiful. So that's my inspiration.
Cool. That's cool. Did you always want to be an artist or did you want to do a different job?
I love this question. So kind of funny. Like when I think about my childhood, I was like, I always wanted stuff that where I made things. So it was like Shrinky Dinks or fashion plates or, something where I was always making stuff. And I feel like I always wanted to make things, but there was this, it's not a real career. And so I was kind of afraid of that. And I did always want to teach too, but that's a whole nother topic. So it was like, well, I want to teach, I want to make art. My first major in college was in geophysics, which was the plate tectonics in the earth. And I love that. And I learned that part of the reason I love that. And I also was in a firearm investigator with the state police. So it's kind of random, but it's having all these things fit together. So it's finding things that fit together. And so yes, I've always wanted to be an artist, but I was really good at talking myself out of it. And then finally I was just like, oh, forget it. And so I did it and I love it. and it works as long as you work, you know?
Awesome. Do you make art for yourself?
Sort of. So I feel like anytime I'm making an art piece, I'm making it for me. Like I don't care what other people think. But then once it's done, it's not for me anymore. It's for everybody else. And that kind of, I'll talk about that later, but it makes it a lot easier to handle when people are like, yeah, I don't like it, because I'm not going to go hang it on the wall. However, one thing that's nice about being a skilled artist is if you see anything anywhere and you want to put it in your home, you can make it. And so I'll see something, I'll be like, I'm going to make my own of that. And it might not be art, it's decor. And anyway, so sort of I make my own art, but it's mainly I make my own decor, if that makes sense.
I totally did that. There, the McMinimans that's right on Liberty. I think it's Boone's Treasury. They have these like amazing, like fleur de lis like wood painting, like on fences.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I love this. And so I like took my fence and made my own, and like it's like my favorite thing. And it's that you're right. That's a really great perk.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Awesome. Isla, do you want to do some more? You good? Tell me where you're at.
I'll answer a couple more. Is your art a way of expressing yourself?
Oh yeah. Yes, I feel like, and this is kind of goes into the next question, to use art as a way to channel your emotions and bring out your feelings. I feel like I don't have a very big vocabulary. I'm like intellectual in many, 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 many ways. Like I'm kind of the kid that was like, I'm cool with English, I'm cool with math, I'm cool with social. Well, I'm not as good at social studies. I think it's interesting, but vocabulary is definitely like a lack for me. And I work on it all the time. So I feel like art is a way that I can speak and express and share my feelings. And I think channeling emotions, because it can be very healing, and also bring out feelings like it helps me kind of understand how I might be feeling about something. So I tied 4 and 5 together. I'm sorry. But yeah, I think self-expression, even if it's something that I'm making more for fun, I realize that it's still me figuring things out, if that makes sense.
Okay. Do you enjoy every step of the art making process?
Nope. No, I have this point that I call the caca stage, and I always wonder if I should say that to middle schoolers because, I'll be making something, I'll be like, what is wrong with this? It looks like crap. Like it just looks so bad. Everything I do, and I have a fixer-upper home, and I'll be staining the floor, and I'm like, we've reached the caca stage. And you just kind of have to push through it. And I feel like so much of art is problem solving. And so you make things, it looks awful, and then you fix it. And I feel like so I don't enjoy the caca stage. I wish it was just like, and it's just not.
I really appreciate you saying that, because I do feel like it makes sense until you start really making a lot of art. It's hard to really sometimes see your own cycles. And some of it is really not fun, right? Because you have your, like, depending on how you do it, right? You have your research stage, your like your new relationship energy with it, right? Like you're like, yeah, I'm gonna do this art project, it's gonna be great, and like depending on what your process looks like. And then sometimes you have like slumps where it's either not looking good or you're like, not really as excited about this. And then if you're like me, like I have a really hard time finishing things like TV shows or books. Like I don't want to finish like the last chapter or like the last 2 episodes because I wanted to like go on forever. So sometimes I have a hard time like doing that last final step to be like, and here it is in the world. Like, because it's just, so I think from different artists, they have different, areas, but I think it is really important as student artists to push through, right, and get it done so that you have it finished and you can move on, but then you start seeing your cycle. So thank you for commenting
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah. And I'm actually a finisher. Like I feel success when something's done. So I love that you brought that up because my husband and I talk about this a lot, like process versus finishing. And I finish, but I have this one piece that I have been working on for 6 years for my dad. And there's this one thing I don't like about it, and it can't be fixed. And the thing is, he probably does not care. And it's not just for my dad. Like he'll get one print and then I'll sell the rest. But I'm like, I just can't get over myself and I need to just finish it.
Yeah, and you get like, and I love that you get to learn more and more about yourself as you keep doing that. And I'm realizing now that I have like a ton of purple on me. There we go. Turn that light off. Yeah, awesome. Do you want to do this last one, Isla?
Sure. Do you make art because it's calming, inspirational, or both?
I think my number one is I make it because it helps me communicate. But I think it's calming. I kind of have to get into a mode and like put on my earbuds, listen to some like chill music and like zone out. I think I'm kind of ADD. And so I feel actually I am. And so I'm like, cool, 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 cool. Or I'm like earbuds in, focus on what I'm doing. And then that just like I get lost in time. So super calming for me if I set myself up for it.
Awesome. Well, we have about 5 more minutes. So we have some experience questions and some future questions. So maybe you just, whatever you want to talk about for the next 5 minutes, whatever seems the most curious making for you or interesting for you to talk about, you could choose.
I think I'll answer each question, but then if you guys have questions about them, like take note. So the first one, can you tell us about your experience in school? So in first grade, I sold my first art piece. My principal, it was I don't know if you guys know strawberry shortcake, but I drew a blueberry muffin strawberry shortcake person. I painted it. And my principal was like, hey, I'll trade you for a bag of candy corns. And I'm like, I'm not going to give you my painting for candy corns. I'll take money. So she gave me $5.
I love it. I love it.
So she sent me, so I made my first sale. Third grade, I painted, or I used chalk and I made this full-size cow and it was in the Bush Barn Art Show. And then fourth grade, I had a teacher who told me I shouldn't draw.
Huh.
So that
Interesting.
yes, it's part of why I'm a teacher because I'm like, everybody creates like their whole life and then all it takes is that nasty to get into your head. And even now that I'm like old, I still hear this, maybe you shouldn't draw, maybe you should think about doing other things. And I'm like, so in high school though, I did photography and then they put me in an advanced art class and I was like, but I don't draw. I still do it. But then college was really where it was at. I thought I would go into like computer design or photo because I can't draw. But then it turned out that I wasn't bad. And you get better. Like the more you do it, the better you get. And I didn't understand growth mindset. So, so college is really where it came up. My favorite artist, oh, it says one. I was gonna say two. Mark Bradford and Swoon. And the reason I like both of them is I feel like they take a lot of their personal experiences and their life experiences that weren't always beautiful, and then they share them. And I also like the material uses material they use because Mark Bradford uses like things from like his mom's salon, and Swoon, I mean, she's just paper and wheat paste, but she does like street art. So she makes these beautiful prints and then like vandalism, street art, sticks them on the bricks and stuff, and outstanding. Where did I go to learn art? Well, I went to Bayreuth, Bayreuth and Sumter and then Judson and Sprague. But mainly it was the University of Oregon. That was where I graduated from. They have a great art school. How long have I been creating art? As long as I can remember. Just like always making something. Always, always, always. What advice would I give to someone who want to go to art school? I think it's accept criticism, because that's when people start getting mean. And that's hard because I am so like, I'm just a soft-hearted person. And so, like how I said, you make your thing and then you release it to the world. Like once you give it away, it's not yours anymore. Like once you present it to people, it's not yours. And so people will say, well, I think you should do this, and I think you should do that. And so it's like, yeah, they're wrong. Yeah, maybe they're right. Well, yeah, they're wrong. So learning to accept criticism.
We
Don't worry about.
just, oh no, I was gonna say we just did our first sharing sessions this last, and we talked about like what did I hear that I want to take with me? What can I let go of? And like
Yeah.
how can I take this into my next art piece? So I
Yes.
love that you had said that.
I wouldn't worry about finding your style, because that will develop. Work hard and talk to people, even if you're shy, which I am. Helps. Okay, future. What do I want to do with what do I want to do with my career? That was actually like my favorite question. I think I thought about it for hours because it's easy to just make. But I think I want to study more art therapy as communication and motivational therapy. Like I would get my doctorate in that. But really, my dream is to have my art in like a hospital or an airport. I love looking at art there, so I'd love it if mine was there.
I
Number
never
two.
really thought about that, but like I have very vivid memories of like one specific painting at OHSU because I was there all the time because I had a really high risk pregnancy.
Oh
And it was like
yeah,
a man in a red hat. And like it's interesting how hospital art is actually like really profound. Now
yeah,
that you say that, I hadn't really thought about that.
yeah. Well, and then the reason for the airport is the Tucson, Arizona airport has some really bad art. I just wish that they would
Well,
fix it.
and the airport too, it's like where was it? I would think it was at Denver, and they had like a full art show, and like I had a huge layover, and it like made the layover really pleasant.
Nice.
But don't eat Panda Express before you take a flight in a small plane from Denver to Bluffington, Nebraska. The
Okay,
art
no.
didn't save that.
Let's see. Will I ever travel outside the country to learn about art? Oh yeah. I feel like the more like culture, environment, people, art, anything, smells, it can influence your art. So yeah, I would travel anywhere. Absolutely. And it's funny because I went to New York City with this friend of mine who's an artist from New York City. So he lives in Oregon now. So I went to visit New York City and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much inspiration. And he's like, that's how I feel about Oregon. I'm like, that is not how I feel about Oregon. So I think it's helpful to see other things.
Little perspective.
Yes. Do I plan on making other kinds of art in the future? I'm glad you asked that. I'm Middle Eastern, I'm Syrian. And so I've just decided I want to start using that influence in some of my art. And I do want to also have things a little more curvy because I notice that those are things that really appeal to me. So I'm going to start applying those in my art. Let's see. What museum would I donate one of my works to? I mean, Museum of Modern Art, but truth be told, I don't think that MoMA is. I mean, maybe once I'm dead, they'll be like, she was brilliant. But at this point, like Jordan Schnitzer at U of O would be great because I went to U of O, and I think it's also a really amazing museum. What future projects are you excited about? Probably that one I talked about with all the knots I'm going to do. That's like this international art competition. It's actually religious based, and the project is supposed to be how all people are equal. And this is one that I've entered a few times, and I never make it past the first judge. So, and there's like 3 rounds of judging, and I look forward to it. Like the first time I was like, ugh, because I had always gotten like high marks and good acclaim. And so this is the first time I was like dashed. And then I entered it again and dashed. And so I'm like, okay, I'm looking forward to it because I probably am not going to win a thing. But my best art always comes from that. competition because I'm trying so darn hard. There you go.
That's really good feedback. And last quarter, and students, I'll let everybody know, but I'll post the talks from last quarter too. But Emily, one of our guest artists from last quarter, talked about how she gets about 1 in 10 opportunities that she applies for. Maybe like, and she's like, and that's better from like 1 in 20, like 10 years ago. And so she just puts a lot of time into, you know, applying and knowing that like 9 out of 10 things are going to be no's, but 1 out of 10 is going to be, and like looking at her CV, she has like 1,000 things that she's done because she just consistently puts in the time and then just, you know, lets the rejections go, which is definitely a skill that takes
Yes. Yeah,
time
I
and
used to fall.
refinement.
I actually don't enter a lot of things. I'm more of a word of mouth person, but I don't enter a lot. And I'm cool with that. Like, I'm good, but this one I do.
Well, that's exciting. Hopefully, if you know, either way, you should let us know and we'll,
Even if I bomb out and then
even
I
if you
crash
bomb out,
over,
that'll be great because then you're going to be like, oh, try again. And we'll be like, awesome.
and I will.
We'll console you.
Thank you. I'll send you guys pictures. That
Yeah.
and the globe. I'll send you pictures.
Awesome. All right. So we are at 11:19. Is there any, I don't want to stop you early. Is there any other final notes you want to say or anything? Okay. What I would love from students is if you could turn on your microphones for sure, but if you could also turn on your video, that'd be great. And just say thank you to her for her time and her experience and her presence here. I'd really appreciate that. So if you could do that now, please.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love your hat, Ariel. Your
All
headband.
right.
So
Thanks.
I need
All right.
to light up.
I know. Does it light up? Oh my gosh, it's happening. It's happening. I can't wait. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, I totally need that.
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
Oh my gosh. And thank you so much, Mrs.
and
Hawes,
thank
for
you.
your time and just for sharing your work and your emotions and your perspective. And it helps me, inspires me. And I know that our students get to learn a lot and just see a lot of different perspectives and see people being, you know, out there making art. You know, it seems kind of ethereal sometimes, but I think when it becomes more concrete, it's a lot of fun. So thank you so much.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye. Bye, Juan and Val and Angie and Frank and Ethan. Bye, Zach and Ariel and did I miss you? And Ethan and Juan and Miss House. Have a great day.
Bye.